Hey guys, welcome back to the Rhythm Section, brought to you as always by The Mind Refinery. I'm Kyle Bodanis. This episode, Coburn and I talk about the new 2 Chainz album, So Help Me God. If you like what you hear, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you have time, follow The Mind Refinery on social media. And now, here's the show. Alright squad, joining me as usual to talk about the new 2 Chainz album, So Help Me God, is the Master of Disaster, my co-host, Coburn Blair. Coburn, how you doing?
Doing excellent. How you doing?
Other than the fact that it is full-scale winter outside, pretty much, I am absolutely fantastic. I was stupid and ventured outside today. Not good.
I cannot relate.
Smart. You're a smart man, smarter than I. But let's get right into this. So 2 Chainz has become a bit of an enigma now. His last full-length Rap or Go to the League was a marked departure from its predecessor, Pretty Girls, like trap music. It was a personal and political turn that explored his inner demons and the difficulty young black men and women have making it in America. The Def Jam press release described the album as such, celebrating black excellence and focusing on the power of education and entrepreneurship. The press release also says the title challenges the notion that the only way out of the inner city is to become a rapper or a ball player. This was, again, a departure from his previous efforts, which were like Pretty Girls, which was oozing that trademark bravado and boasting with his trademark humor. 2 Chainz generally says funny ass shit, and he's quotable, and we love it. With that said, though, going into this album, where is 2 Chainz in the rap game? Because I feel like his last album kind of changed the possibilities for him.
2 Chainz is he cemented himself. He, has probably one of the best rebrands ever to happen in rap music. He has been around now for well over a decade, but in his newer incarnation, probably as 2 Chainz, about a decade or so. So he's kind of like in this era, like an important figure. He is kind of crossed over to the point where he's known, outside of rap. He has his, Vice show. He is kind of quotable. He exists in a lot of different spaces. So I think coming off his last album and going to this one, he exists in a world that he can pretty much do whatever he wants at this point.
Which is really where you want to be.
Yeah.
I love Rap or Go to the League. I mean, that for me is probably my favorite 2 Chainz album, which we will get into. I think it's the closest thing to a concept album you're going to hear from him. And it was surprising how open he was on that record, delving into some of the darker parts of his life and things that he's endured, which of course he's touched on in his music, but he really kind of, let people in with that. And I think that was like a kind of a big artistic growth for him, and I think it touched on a direction that maybe some people think 2 Chainz wasn't capable of or wasn't within his personality, but it added artistic legitimacy to his game. And like you said, he can kind of do anything now. So for me, that album really opened up a bunch of new possibilities for him. I mean, it's not knocking his previous work. I love Pretty Girls, and but if you're a fan of an artist, you want to see, growth and versatility. And I have fond memories of Pretty Girls and, the earlier era 2 Chainz. I feel like my cousins who are those Generation Z kids and, their interpretation of hip hop and what they love is a lot different from ours, but we kind of like bonded over that album. Like we would bang 4 a.m. at family gatherings, and, it was good. It almost like started the conversation between us. And obviously he's always working with great producers like Mike Dean, Murder Beats. Shout out to Murder Beats. So again, as you said, like it's really kind of expanded what he's capable of. So this is one I was really interested in this because I'm like, okay, so this guy can kind of do anything now. So what's he going to do with that? And I think he's done quite a bit. What were your initial thoughts on this album?
I was blown away by this album. I've been a fan of 2 Chainz since about Old National Music. Obviously, I liked him in his previous incarnation as Titty Boy. Play a Circle was great. but then kind of as he transitioned between Old National and Cody and Cowboy, I was really enamored with him, his witticism, his beat selection, and just his persona. And he really eased into becoming a new figure in hip hop. And he quickly ascended from, being a guy in a part of a rap group that was signed to Ludacris's DTP album to being a solo star and a fast riser. And, he has these big moments in hip hop, like his Mercy verse or, other such moments that like, you're like, oh, wow, this guy is, something to contend with. He's something we should be paying attention to.
That Mercy verse is really what kind of brought him on my radar.
Yeah, and I think that's like a verse that you couldn't miss. Like if you were paying attention to hip hop, if you kind of were on the peripheral of hip hop, that verse, caught your ears, it, caught your eyes, and you're just kind of like, oh, who is this guy? Like, he's so witty, he's such a self-realized and self-actualized character in rap, and you don't get that too many of those.
I think you need a certain amount of, I understand that he brags quite a bit. It is hip hop. He does it quite a bit, but there is a humbleness with him, I think, in that self-realization, because, you get a lot of people who aren't self-realized, aka Kanye West. I really enjoy this album. It's kind of a return to that more funny, boastful 2 Chainz, but I feel like this is one of his best sounding albums. When this dropped, I went for a walk with it, and I was, it was bouncing in my headphones. I just got really, really, really into it. Even some tracks, from listening to it over and over again, even some tracks that maybe I wasn't into right off the bat started to really grow on me. And you saw kind of like a full album really, 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 shape together. The fact that he was able to do such a socially charged album last time and then return with this level of quality and different style, like lyrical style, I thought it really shows his range. It's also really, really deftly put together. It's a lean 15 tracks. You want more at the end of it. You're hitting those boom bap production styles with the trademark trap flourishes. You got guys like Q Beats on it, Mike Dean again, Chief Keef. Then he goes like Pure Atlanta with the TM88 and production. And I just was really, really surprised how much I loved this. Not that, the quality isn't there with 2 Chainz. He's become a luminary, but it was just really, really, really good. And I think it might be in the running for one of my favorite albums that's come out this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think I'd put it up there too. Like, I don't think there wasn't a feature wasted. There wasn't a beat wasted. He maximized everything he could in these 15 tracks. And I was not quite expecting this from 2 Chainz. Not to say that like, he's done anything that proves that he like shouldn't be counted on, but I just thought this was a cut above what I was expecting from a 2 Chainz album in this year.
I gotta ask you, what was your thoughts on Rapper Go to the League?
I think Rapper Go to the League is an album that I probably played a probably grand total of 3 times, and I didn't really go back to it or sit with it until I was getting into this album. And I thought Rap or Go to the League, like, I think it's a fine album, and I read like a lot of the criticisms of it, and like it was really well rated. I don't think it connected with me though. And it wasn't kind of the album that I was anticipating at the time.
Interesting. So what got you with 2 Chainz? Like, what kind of lured you in, when you first started listening to him?
I mean, I think one of the first songs I heard when he was still kind of going by Titty Boy and he was just on the cusp of changing it was Cowboy. And it samples an old rock song. Is it, I want to say...
I'm trying to think now.
It's
because I've learned, because I got
Aerosmith?
I got into his earlier stuff, like pre 2 Chainz stuff, like afterwards, because I was like, 2 Chainz, interesting. Heard the Mercy verse, that kind of just opened the whole thing, and it kind of changed my perception of him, and then I just went on, the deep dive.
Yeah, and I think like he opened it up, and like if you heard like Play a Circle, Duffel Bag Boy, like he was showing flashes of that brilliance at the time, and I don't know how many people in that era like bought that Disturbing the Peace album or were listening.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm listening to it in my other ear. I believe it's Wanted Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi, yes, that's exactly it. Yeah. And I just love that sample and like, yeah, Dead or Alive. That's exactly what it was. So I love that sample, and I thought it was, just genius. And then that's what kind of like pulled me in, and then I kind of like, went from there. He did Old National Music and Codeine Cowboy were the same year, and then he gave us his debut based on a true story in 2012. And I think, from that period, he kind of just grew a lot, and he had his branding down. He's coming into the rap game, or reintroducing himself to the rap game as a mature artist, as someone who's kind of like, seen the pitfalls of it and is not like a young artist. And he didn't waste any time establishing himself on his second go round.
I think your point about him having probably the best rebrand in hip hop is spot on, because I mean, you see them. I mean, I guess a comparison could be, I mean, and maybe even not a good comparison, with Pusha T prior to being Pusha T. Well, I mean, not be prior to being Pusha T, but it was with Crips, right?
Clips, yeah.
Clips, yes. Sorry, my apologies. I thought that is another example of this, but I think 2 Chainz, it was just such a transformation, and I think his ability to do that is and understand kind of what a coup that was to kind of pull that off. And also, I mean, when you're leaving behind that kind of situation, I mean, you're also leaving behind some of the, more unsavory parts of his past that he kind of regrets, and I think he touches on that in Rap and Go to the League. I mean, I can't even really think of anybody who's been able to do the same.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's an impossible position. Like, so many artists have tried to like crack back into music. Maybe I might put like Young Berg, kind of reintroducing himself as Hitmaker, and then going on this A&R run at Atlantic, and being behind some of these Cardi B and these bigger records. Maybe he's in that kind of wheelhouse, but then again, like, that's not in the spotlight as much as 2 Chainz is. So he connected with Kanye West, and then signing to Good Music, and he became we went from being an artist that like people had forgotten about to being like the most in demand artist in the music game. And I think that's like a very hard thing to do, and a very hard thing to maintain as well.
What do you think Def Jam's role in his career has been? I mean, because we talk about Good Music, like, how do you believe that shaped, and do you believe the label change in hip hop is a significant item, is a significant thing to take place?
Well, I'd have to kind of look into it. I don't know exactly how his deal was structured, because like, originally DTP was on Def Jam South, so he may have just kind of stayed on Def Jam, and then because like in 2012 he signed that solo deal, so he kind of always was in that house. And I know Def Jam has gone through a lot of changes in the past like 20 years or so, from the point where he was originally signed to the point where he signs a solo deal with Def Jam Records in 2012. So I think there are elements there, but it's also hard because there's a lot of artists that we see who are on Def Jam who are complaining to get out of their deal, or can't seem to release music when they want to. So to be in demand at a label like Def Jam, I think speaks volumes, right? Because they sign a lot of acts. They are the hip hop label. Russell Simmons, Rick Rubin, like, we know like their pedigree, we know LL Cool J, we know like how they started and how they were dominant. And they've kind of always maintained that hip hop aesthetic, but I think they have fallen some pegs in terms of keeping artists happy. There, like, we always hear about Kanye West's like pursuits to leave the label. And I'd imagine he's probably one of the biggest acts that is currently signed to Def Jam right now.
So I gotta ask about just like the sequence in terms of this. So he signs to Good Music. When did he sign to Good Music?
I think the Good Music deal, I don't know if that was
Did it exist in parallel to his Def Jam to his Def Jam contract?
Yeah, so in February 2012 he signs to Def Jam, and then it seems like in about March or by May he was kind of moved under Good Music, which is under the Def Jam umbrella anyways. So
that's right.
So I think they just kind of like moved his probably marketing team and his day-to-day people at the label to the sub label. And I think because good music had a lot of brand cachet and Kanye had a lot of brand cachet at the time, it's easier to do that and to have somebody like locally or more close to you run your marketing and have decisions made at a bit closer level than they might be run out of Def Jam New York.
So let's get into, the tracks, the features. What for you were standout tracks on this?
I mean, I think I was really blown away by Feel Away, featuring Kanye and Brent Faiyaz. And I think this is like one of the bigger looks that I've seen Brent Faiyaz have as an independent artist recently, to be on his track with 2 Chainz and Kanye. And I thought that beat, the way that they're trading verses, everything about that really blew me away. And that was like the best I've heard Kanye West in probably like 4 years or so.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, I'm like, oh, where they dig this up from 5 years ago? He sounds like, what you would interpret as the old Kanye, so to speak. And I love the way they trade things. And it feels, for Brent Faiyaz, this is the kind of track that could be a kingmaker and kind of lead to a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like he's kind of had that moment in the sun with Crew, and then I think he has been watched by all the industry tastemakers and everyone who knows anything about music has been paying attention to what he's doing. So to see him pop up here again on like a major label album as a feature, he's doing it independently, and so he's managed to parlay his career in a way that he can still be tapped to do things like this, but he's not a slave to any of these labels. So I think that's really cool. I also really liked Mulatto's feature. I know she's doing a lot in music right now, and she is in for a really good 2021. So her feature on the second single, Quarantine Thick, I thought was really amazing. And then I really like Southside Hove. I know that like 2 Chainz talked about it on the Breakfast Club. He really wanted a verse from Jay-Z eventually, and he's kind of like sad because he feels like he's been turned down too many times. So I thought this as a kind of a tribute to Jay-Z worked really well on the album.
What were your thoughts on Ziploc with the Kevin Gates feature?
I'm a big Kevin Gates fan, so I really like that song a lot. It was cool hearing him pop up as well, and I thought they really worked well together.
This is probably my favorite track on this. Really got the head bob going, and I really like Kevin Gates's verse on it. I thought it was quite good. This is definitely one of the standouts. The Kanye track, Feel Away was really great. I know that you weren't a fan of YRB, the Rick Ross feature.
I liked Rick Ross's feature. I'm not a big fan of Schoolie, and I know Schoolie's, part of 2 Chainz' camp. I found he kind of was distracting on that song. And I thought Rick Ross, kind of came in heavy, and his verse was amazing. I thought 2 Chainz was giving some good verses, but I think like this song, for me, it felt like it was getting pulled in too many different ways. So while I enjoyed like the individual moments of brilliance on it, I thought it kind of detracted from the song in the whole, and kind of detracted. Well, probably one of my least favorite songs on the album.
I would say that the Schoolie situation definitely kind of pulls you out of it. For me, I really like, the strings with it, and I just kind of, got into it. But I think that's an interesting thing about Schoolie. But I feel like he could have brought someone else other than Schoolie for that track, and it would have really tied it together, or just have those two guys, because I thought that Rick Ross comes out and he does his thing.
Especially after like their verses too, to see them kind of like connect again in this way, it was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I did enjoy the opener, Lambo Wrist. The reason why I liked it is because I think coming off of Rapper Go to the League, you needed that thesis statement in regards to like what this album is going to be coming off the last one. And, it definitely asserts what this is going to be, that it's going to be a return to this braggadocio. I love that he went back there, although I loved Rapper Go to the League. But he does this well. It's kind of a banger right off the top. I enjoy it. Gray Area, I also kind of enjoy. Gray Area is kind of a track where I was listening to it and wasn't into the hook right away, but then as I got more and more into it, I really quite enjoyed it.
What did you think of the Lil Wayne feature?
Obligatory Lil Wayne feature? I like it. I liked it a lot better than other Lil Wayne features I've been hearing lately. I feel like they go well together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're kind of returning to that duffel bag boy energy. I thought it was one of Lil Wayne's better features of the year. I wasn't like miffed by it or anything. Didn't like, especially after his whole controversy. I wasn't like, oh, it's Lil Wayne. I was like kind of like, oh wow, this is he's sounding good. He's sounding like he's kind of like on the ball on this one. So I wonder if that's something that like 2 Chainz brings out of him, if they have that kind of rapport when they work together.
Yeah, and I feel like, they're drinking the same Kool-Aid, you know what I mean? Like they're birds of a feather to an extent. So I feel like they work really well together. They're kind of less conventional rapping styles, and I think it just kind of works together. Whereas like when Lil Wayne is with someone who is super conventional, I don't know if that necessarily works. But I enjoyed this. I think we've been kind of giving little Lil Wayne features a bit of shit this year because they just haven't been that great. So like this was really, it was kind of cool to see that this come together, and I think that is the theme of this, is that this thing really came together very tightly, and even the songs that maybe I don't like that much aren't that bad. And like for example, can't go for that, the sorry, not can't go for that, the Free Lighter, the Lil Uzi Vert and Chief Keef track, that I wasn't really too into. I don't know how much I enjoyed Chief Keef's production style to an extent. What was your thoughts on that feature?
I liked it. I'm enjoying seeing Chief Keef transition from being this legendary iconic artist to kind of taking a break from the spotlight and having a kind of second wind as well. Getting his production out there and just really honing his craft in that way. So I think it's great to see him work with someone like 2 Chainz and Little Uzi, and still he still has his relevance, but he's not pushing so much on the rap side of things as much as he was. Like he's still putting out albums and stuff, but he's also has production credits on a lot of albums this year.
There's a certain amount of spotlight associated, when you're just putting out albums, especially with him. It's funny because I just rewatched the Noisy Shrek series, and just like how it was just exploring his rise and all that kind of thing. And I was like, man, his story is so fucking cool, but I just never really connected with the production style necessarily. But I feel if you're trying to pull back from the from the spotlight, that's kind of what's good. If you have the ability to both rap and produce, is that you can kind of control people's access to you and control the industry's access to you, while you still have a direct line to making cash.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great way to do that, and to just to be there and be present and be relevant without having to force anything.
If we look at 2 Chainz's career right now, would you say it's on the ascension, or he has already produced his best work?
I mean, I think that's a hard question to say. I think we kind of get into the conversation that's been had around hip hop a lot, is the role of the hip hop elder statesman. I look in this album and it kind of gives me shades of like 444 for Jay-Z, in terms of like its content, in terms of how sparse it is and how focused it is. So 2 Chainz is what, like 43 years old or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So to see him still being able to produce albums of this magnitude, and albums that like have impact, and he doesn't really sound like he's chasing a style on here. He's obviously a very prominent trap rapper, and this is trap, but this album almost reminded me of like, it was like boom bap or something in a way. It was like kind of like boom trap or something. Like it wasn't too out there. It wasn't like, there wasn't any songs that I was like, oh, he really needs a radio hit, and so he made this song. Everything felt like it fit into place, and fit within the context of the album as well.
That's one thing. I kind of feel that he's still making, on the way to making some of his best music because of the cohesion of the album. Like he's able to kind of, as I kind of said, explore, that boom bap style, but also, with heavy trap influence, and his ability to kind of combine that on this, I thought was really, really, really good. And, his albums are getting better. They're getting tighter. They're getting I feel like he's being more selective with tracks and beats and what he's putting out there. And I think that shows a level of industry savvy that can sometimes get lost with how humorous he is. And you see him on Vice, with a stack of joints next to him on in the car, and he's an amusing figure. But then I there is just a level of understanding of the industry, where it's going, and combining influences, and he always surrounds himself with the best producers. I know that we've been talking a lot about lately, and we talked about this with Jansport Jay, about working with single producers and that kind of thing. But I mean, he's doing this well by lining up, again, a good cast of characters to work with them. But I think that going well and being and putting cohesive albums together requires a really strong creative vision from the lead artist. And I think this is a really good example of that. As you said, I didn't expect it to be this good as well. I thought, okay, I really love the last one. He's gonna put this out. It's gonna be Lunch Bag Letdown. But it ended up being absolutely fantastic. And I think I don't know, because we talk about how when rappers get older, they kind of become almost elder statesmen, and that's kind of the fate. But I don't feel like I feel like he brings people along, but he's not close to that yet. I still think he has a large body of work that can be put together.
Yeah, and like I do want to see him keep contributing, and like he did that kind of group album for True, his new rap group, or not so much new, but his rap collective. I didn't listen to that one. I think I'm gonna go back and see what that was about. But yeah, I'd be interested to see what contributions he makes going forward. But I think this is a really good album, and this is the kind of album that I want to hear from artists of his caliber and artists at his age. So I was floored by it, and I'd be interested to see where he goes next from here. But I think this is what he should be making. This is concise. This is urgent. It matters. And it's not like he made an album. I would compare this to like the T.I. album we just got. And, while there was some good rapping on it, I think this album, cuts through what I would call the fat that I found on the T.I. album. And this is just a more solid project that, I will listen to for longer.
Do you feel 2 Chainz is at the highest level of hip hop in terms of the individuals? Well, first of all, if we were to create the gold standard right now for hip hop, and who is at the top of the game, who would you say it is?
I mean, it's definitely Drake. And then you can get to debating about Kendrick and J. Cole and Big Sean, and then, the Kanyes, and then from there. But I would say, yes, 2 Chainz definitely in the upper echelon. His name still holds a lot of weight. He's still a star. He's still like a rap A-lister. So yeah, I would say he's in a really good place, and which you don't see many people at his age in that place, especially because he doesn't have like his career, as 2 Chainz doesn't span as long as like a T.I.'s career, or like, Rick Ross, or somebody who was more relevant in the early 2000s and continued that relevancy. Whereas his relevancy kind of came about in a major way in the last 10 years, and he's kind of maximized that relevancy in that time period.
So where does this album rank in terms of 2 Chainz' work?
This is probably going to be in my 2 Chainz. If I'm going to go by albums, it's probably in his top 3 for sure. If I'm going to go include the mixtapes, I would put this up with Based on a True Story. I liked it better than like than like the Danielson album. I liked it better than like True Religion, the mixtape. So I would kind of have to put this pretty high for me. Like, it's much better, I think, than Pretty Girls Like Trap Music in 2017. Better than Boats. Yeah, I would probably put it up there for me in his discography.
I think for me, it's top 3, probably 1 or 2. I mean, I do enjoy Rapper Go to the League, but I feel like I enjoy this one more sonically. Like, Rapper Go to the League, I was really impressed about regarding the concept of it, where he was going with it, and kind of how like LeBron James executive produced that album. And it makes sense because it's kind of looking at this idea of like you can't get out of the streets unless you rap or play basketball. And it's about looking at entrepreneurship and other options. But sonically, this one is so rich and good, and I think from a straight musical standpoint, it's better than anything he's put together. I mean, Based on True Story is good. I enjoy it. I don't think it's like, I think the problem is when you're getting into the earlier albums by him, there's a cohesion issue. Um, and it's almost like there's a little bit more put into what the tracks individually are going to sound like. It almost sounds like this is something that's going to be on like like it's built for a playlist, whereas the last two albums, this one and its predecessor, feel like whole pieces of work um that are meant to go together and selected and curated carefully. And like for me, I was really happy with this. I can see myself listening to this continuously. I've already kind of putting it on, various playlists and stuff that I always put together for, while I'm working and stuff like that. So I guess the big question is, on the patented mind refinery scale, what would you rank this?
I think I'm gonna have to give this 8.5 cogs out of the possible 10. I think this is fantastic work from 2 Chainz. I think this is an album that, like, I want to hear, I want to see live. I want more of my favorite artists to make albums like this towards, like, as they get up there in age.
I have this as an 8. I think it's one of the best hip hop albums to come out this year. By some margin, maybe 8, 8.5. There's a couple things I didn't like on it, but other than that, I think it's really well put together. And as an album, it's just going good. And like when you're looking at hip hop this year, I really think there was a really big return to the album and what it is, and it as an art form. And again, in our Jansport J interview, he talks about how no one's going to be talking to their grandkids about that rap caviar playlist. They talk about albums like this. And I think when you look back at 2 Chainz' career, this will be something that will be held in very high regard.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that. Where do you think 2 Chainz goes from here? Do you think he kind of gives us this again in like 2 years or another year, or do you think he focuses on other endeavors?
Well, I don't know, like, because he's doing the Vice show. I'm wondering like how, because like him working in a collective now. I'm wondering how that affects the way he goes, and I'm wondering if that is a precursor to more to even further endeavors in the business of hip hop, you know what I mean? Or maybe he prefers to stay out of that. I mean, like, he's an entrepreneur. I don't know, like, I think that, as you said earlier, he can kind of do anything now because he's kind of really gone to the polar opposites in terms of expression and the message he's trying to put out, and whether the albums are socially conscious and whether they're just fun. And that's a level of versatility you don't see very often. So I think for him, it's going to be continuing to put out records like this. I'd be very interested in what producers he's working with. That for me would be what the question mark is, because I mean, he likes to work with like guys like Murda Beats. He obviously loves working with like Mike Dean. I mean, but like, who else would you like to see him work with? I like to see him and Kenny Beats, to be honest with you.
I think like a Kenny Beats would be cool. Maybe like trying to experiment with like some more West Coast producers. Like, I like the stuff he's done with Ty Dolla $ign, so maybe like playing more in those realm of sonics, like maybe even some more Mustard production or something like that. But I like 2 Chainz behind a variance of production, and I think that he has an excellent ear for beats. If you gave him like a Hit Boy executive produced album, like, because after the run Hit Boy's been on, I'm sure that would work well. I'm sure like more Mike Well Made It would help. But I think he's kind of, he knows what he's doing in that realm, so it would be cool to see and pick a producer for him to do a one-on-one album with. I think that would be a lot of fun, and it would kind of push him in some kind of new ways.
Hit Boy is interesting because I feel that Hit Boy is really good at maintaining his own style, but also adapting to the creative, to the creative whims of the artist he's working with, right? And again, 2 Chainz does pick beats very well. That's how he's able to put it together cohesive albums, with a bevy of producers and diverse producers as well. So, I mean, I love the Hit Boy idea. I think that could be really, really good. And, Hit Boy executive produce. But at the end of the day, also, I think that, 2 Chainz has the ear to kind of bring it all together on himself. And I think that is probably as a result of successes and failures in the hip hop industry and being able to kind of ride them and realize where things weren't working and having a good sense of that. And I think he doesn't really get credit for how intelligent he is.
Yeah, like I think he's kind of underrated in that one aspect.
On that note, Mr. Coburn and Blair, we gotta get going.
Yeah, thanks for chatting.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.